Okay, welcome back. Welcome back to our journey of learning, coaching, and emotional intelligence. So let's call on a couple of folks. I would like to hear some of the conversations that you had in your breakout room. So let's go to Tony. Tony Martinez. Do you mind sharing with us some of the things that you folks talked about? Thank you, Tony. You're absolutely correct. And sometimes as leaders, practicing that self-management can be difficult. Again, we're under stress. I mean, we have deadlines and we're dealing with people issues to include our own issues. And sometimes, we can lose it, but practicing that self-management, as Tony described, is important because if you blow up at me and if you just, ignore me or just berate me, you're not going to get the best version of me afterwards. How about you, Gavin? I haven't heard from you today. Would you care to share with the group things that you folks talked about? Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Shoshana, for your feedback in the chat as well. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Okay, great job there. Let's continue here our learning of journey. Any questions before we continue from emotional intelligence? Okay, my clicker isn't working. Let's try that. One moment, please. Okay, so what I want to do next is just give you a quick glance, just something to think about. Now, we're not going to go into detail, but what we want to highlight um, is to know your people to the best of your ability. And we're connecting this to what we refer to as learning styles. Now, there are about the most popular 9 different learning styles that are out there. And the advantages of knowing these learning styles, it gives me some additional insight about my people, about my sphere of influences. It's not a one size fits all. Thus, my management style needs to be able to adjust to the people that I'm managing. My communication style needs to adjust to the person who I'm communicating with. And that's a skill set. And part of it is wrapped up in the learning style. So may I have a volunteer? How about you, Cindy, if you don't mind? Cindy, do you mind reading these 2 paragraphs on learning styles, please? So again, just for the sake of time, we're not going to go into detail of these, but we just wanted to do a high overview as sort of know your people. Again, it could be that bodily kinesthetic. They could be body smart. They could be more that interpersonal. They could be people smart. And then we have already talked about those verbal lightning or those word book smart people, right? They could be logic smart. They could be nature smart, self smart, picture smart, music smart. And we just learn in different ways, and that's okay. The goal, again, is just to get to know your people. Which maybe category do they fall in? Which do you fall in terms of your learning style? And sometimes the connection between communication or effective communication between me and this other person is really understanding how they learn. And sometimes as a leader, I've grown frustrated. It's like, hey, wait a minute. 90% of the team gets it and understand it, but there's one person I continue to have issues and challenges with. I used to blow them off as not interested, not engaged. Now that I have this access to this new information, it's giving me another tool in my tool belt to rethink maybe the way I'm communicating, the way I'm facilitating may be different for this particular person. They learn differently. What are your thoughts on this, Megan? What's your perspective? Okay. And how important do you think that is for a leader, Megan? So it's great that people can learn differently, but do I need to adjust my style because of these people don't get where I'm coming from? They don't understand how I communicate, Isn't they're the one with the problem, Megan, and not me? Absolutely, Bacon. Thank you. I was being facetious there. But if we're going to be a really good coach, learning how my people receive information is going to be key. If I don't understand that, I may think is they're the ones with the problem. And remember, according to the growth mindset, sometimes the last place that we look, especially as leaders, is internal. It can't be me. Chances are it could be. All right. Let's continue. Let me go into the chat to make sure I didn't miss anything. One moment. Okay, great. Thank you. Good feedback there. Thank you. Okay, so let's take a quick glance at the growth mindset. We talked about this in our last training. And again, this concept was created by Carol Dweck, right? I highly recommend that you do some homework on the growth mindset. I think it's a really good place for leaders to really look into that concept, to not only look into it, but to apply it to yourselves. And a quick overview, once again, is looking at situations, especially difficult situations, as an opportunity for you to learn, grow, and change for the better. If any of you have aspirations to be in a different leadership role than you are today in your future state, chances are that's going to require some changes, maybe some internal changes. And so sometimes these changes come in form of challenges, pain, discomfort. So as you assess your sort of world, if you will, wherever you're feeling pain, discomfort, maybe some stress, even some anxiety, maybe apply this concept. I encourage you to apply this concept and see if there's something about you that maybe needs to be tweaked or adjusted or changed in order to get to your desired outcome. Again, it could be easier said than done because, again, just speaking for Richard, sometimes I'm looking for that situation to change, not for me to change. And if I'm going to aspire to be the things that I dream about, especially in my capacity, in my role, in my future state, usually I'm the one that's going to have to change. Does that make sense, folks? Yes? Okay, thank you. Let's continue. The other thing that we want to look at is that we want to talk about communication styles. Okay? Every person has a unique communication style, a way in which we interact and exchange information with others. We call that, again, just communication. Now, when we communicate, especially as leaders, especially as coaches, we want to pull from what we call effective communication. So what is effective communication? Very simply put, effective is successful in producing a desired result. Communication is nothing more than exchange of information and news. Effective communication is when a person wants a desired outcome by sharing key information or news. Okay? Now, with that being said, there are some rules to communication. Bear with me for a moment while I adjust my screen. Just one moment, please. We had someone in the waiting room. One moment. Okay. So let's look at the rules of communication. And these are rules, per se, that hopefully we abide by. So one of those rules is that message must be clear. So whatever I'm communicating, in this case, what I'm facilitating, as a coach, what are you communicating? Whatever it is, it must be clear. And think about the things that we must do in order for that to be clear. The planning, maybe even the practice, writing it out. Whatever the case may be, that message needs to be clear in your head, that what comes out of your head is the same thing that coming out of your mouth, if you would, please. They are in alignment with each other. The sender must be able to deliver the message clearly and concisely. So in our context of training, let's use this as an example. So I am the facilitator and you are the adult learners. So in this context, the training, the message, the communication, it needs to be clear. The sender, this is Richard, must be able to deliver the message concisely, right? Clearly and concisely. But then notice in step number 3, something unique happens. The receiver, all of you, must be able to hear and receive the message, meaning that you have to participate in your own survival. You're part of this journey as well. Step number 4 is that the receiver must be able to understand the message. And if by chance you do not understand what's being communicated, what should you do, Joe? Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Absolutely. Right? And then last but not least, interruptions or distractions must be avoided. Now, let me take a quick look. Who have an open window right there? Someone is checking their email. Someone is on the internet. Let's see, who is that? Of course, I can't see you, right? However, I also know that distractions are happening right now. Interruptions are happening right now, even in the midst of the training. And granted, we do that. We call that multitasking. We call it working on other projects. When we're coaching our people, they deserve our undivided attention. There is no multitasking. There is no answering the telephones, responding to each other in chat. It is giving him or them your undivided attention. This is how we effectively communicate. These are the rules of communication. Make sense? Okay. Let's continue. Any questions? I think there's something in chat. Hold on one second. Okay, or reinstated with the supervisor is the one without the question. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now let's talk about active listening. Let's see here. May I have a volunteer? How about you, Lupe? I don't think I've spoken with you today. Lupe, do you mind reading this definition of active listening, please? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So active listening, as you look at these sort of these circles, I want you to rate yourself, and you don't have to do this in the chat. Just do your own internal observation. Rate yourself on each of these categories in terms of your ability to be an active listener. The rating scale is 1 to 5. 1 meaning it's an area of opportunity. 5 means you do this extremely well. So let's start with hearing content. How well do you do that? Now keep in mind, when you're multitasking, that gets distorted really quickly, just for clarity. Listening for feelings, right? How do you listen for feelings? How well do you gauge yourself? And again, this is when you're practicing emotional intelligence, just for clarity. Observing body language. Remember, according to research, 65%, if not more, of our communication is nonverbal. So body language is important. That neutral technique, right? That's being able to listen in a very unbiased way. Just being neutral. Listening to understand, if you will. Paraphrasing. Self-awareness. Reflection. Being able to ask probing questions, clarifying questions, and summarizing. Rate yourself as an active listener. And of course, you heard me say this before, according to research, I think it was Stephen Covey who says this, is that most people listen to reply versus listening to understand. If we're going to be good stewards or active listening, listening to understand is important. So, question for you is in the chat. Why is listening hard? Let's talk about this one for a couple of moments. Let's hear from some of the folks here. Why is listening hard? Let's start with you, Vanessa. Why is listening hard? Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Vanessa. I see things in the chat here. It takes patience, Julie and Ashley, because they may disagree with your logic or rationale. Absolutely. How about you, Brittany? Do you mind sharing? Why is the listening hard? And Brittany, that's a very interesting insight there. I used to have that challenge as well, especially speaking to my boss or bosses or people of influence. I would get nervous, like, focusing on what I'm going to say. But what I realized, because I'm so focused on what I'm going to say, I begin to be or get disconnected with what was being said. So I've learned to tune out my competing thoughts and really listen to what those people of influence in this example was saying. And once I was able to active listening or listen to what they were communicating, it gave me a better opportunity to respond appropriately. And that solved my problem, to actually listen to understand what they were communicating versus listening to see how I was going to reply. Totally different skill set. How about you, Kim? I haven't heard from you today, Kim. Why is listening hard, Kim? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And Katrina's iPhone is what's showing up here. How important do you think listening is as a coach? How important is listening as a coach? Katrina? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Katrina. And how about you, Lauren? Lauren, what, how might you improve your listening skills, Lauren? If there was an opportunity for you there, how might you improve them? Lauren Clark Kirk, can you hear me? Okay. How about Michael Berry? How might you improve your listening skills if it applies to you? Mhm. Thank you, thank you. And Crystal, how important is listening, or how effective are you at active listening, Crystal? Are you doing well? Is that an area of opportunity? What are your thoughts? Mm, awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Crystal. David, let's key up our next poll. Okay, our next poll. So the next poll, folks, is going to focus on the 5 communication styles. They are aggressive, assertive, passive aggressive, manipulative, and submissive. What I want you to do is to just check off in this poll what is your dominant communication style? What is your dominant communication style? The one that you use the most. The one that you use the most. Thank you, folks. Thank you. Thank you. Doing good. We're still almost a little bit more than halfway there. Great job, folks. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Got about 90% people that have voted. There's something in the chat here. Let me take a look. Okay. So, David, when I switch, okay, thank you very much. Okay. So let's take a look here, folks. So we have 3%, or one person listed aggressive, 70%, also known as 26 people assertive, 8 people, 22% submissive, No one selected manipulative. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, would you believe that the most dominant or the most effective, let me say that, the most effective communication style is assertive? That's the most effective one, without doubt. But would you also believe it's the style that people use the least? It's the most effective one. Again, it's even here in the polls here, but according to research, it's the style that people use the least. So, if that statistic is true, why is it? How it can be the most effective one, but the style that people use the least? Anyone care to take a stab at that one? Most effective, but it's the style that people use the least. Any guesses? Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, very good insight. Go ahead, Joe. Berg. Okay, thank you. I like that one, Joe. I do agree. I'm looking at Jamie's comment. Being assertive could possibly lead you to believe that you may step on someone else's toes. Okay, so let me ask this another way. In terms of being on the receiving end of an aggressive, assertive, passive aggressive, manipulative, submissive, which style would you prefer that people communicate or use when communicating with you? If you can place that in the chat. Being on the receiving end, assertive, okay? Assertive, okay? Good balance of assertive, okay? Everyone's interesting, okay? A very confident assertive. Submissive, thank you, Jay. Different, okay? So I'm asking these questions because they're keying up some topic and conversation as we lean into our next topic here. We're going to take a look at the 5 different communication styles. So I am going to ask for 5 volunteers. Each volunteer is going to read the definition of that style, and then I will come up and talk, or come in after each style and talk about the behavior characteristics of those styles. So may I have my first volunteer? And I'm going to select you if you don't mind. Let's go with Kristen. Kristen, do you mind reading for us the assertive style, please? Aggressive, thank you. You're right. Please forgive me. Thank you, Kristen. Now, just for clarity, folks, as we look at these 5 different communication styles, there is a place and time to demonstrate each and every one of them, right? You can build a case around any of them. And regardless on what the narratives look and sound like, again, it doesn't have to be in a negative way. I'm prior military. I work with a lot of folks also in the safety industry, right? They have a very aggressive style because lives are at stake. It's not a debate. It's not a conversation. This needs to happen or else. So it may be communicated in very aggressive style. That makes sense for them. Okay? but it doesn't have to be the style in which we use all the time. So let's take a look at some of those behavior characteristics, right, of an aggressive person. So it could be frightening, loud, and hostile. Is willing to achieve goals at other expense. They're out to win. It could be demanding, abrasive. It could be just downright intimidating. They could come across like a bully. The language that aggressive people use, you're crazy. You make me sick. I just had enough about out of you. The nonverbal can be loud. Their posture is bigger than yours. They even invade your space sometimes. Now, this is the part that I want you to really think about. Remember, we talked about impact earlier, the impact we're having on other people. This one here is called people on the receiving end. So when I communicate in an aggressive way, people on the receiving end feel like the following. They feel defensive, aggressive as well. They want to fight back. Hey, I'm not just going to take this, Richard. They feel uncooperative, resentful. They might feel humiliated, hurt, or afraid. It says a loss of respect of a person. And mistakes, how about this one? Mistakes and problems are often not reported to an aggressive person because they don't want the person to blow up. Imagine if your boss was the aggressive communicator. How reluctant are you to share an issue or challenge with them because you know that you're going to be the receiving end of that aggressive behavior? You're more inclined to like, oh man, I need to fix this problem before I share it with them, or how I'm going to share this with them because I don't want them to rip me a new one. You go through all of these thoughts. And this is why as leaders, this is why it's important for us not to lean in constantly on that aggressive style. It may be a place and time, but it usually is counterproductive. People should not be scared of you, if that makes sense. You should be approachable. Make sense? Okay, so let's go with Jay. Jay Fault. Do you mind reading for us the assertive communication, please? Thank you. Thank you very much, Jay. So I asked earlier, why might this be the style that people use the least? And part of it because it's a skill. It's the sweet spot between aggressive and passive. It's considering thoughts and feelings. You remember applying emotional intelligence when I'm communicating. It's not just saying what you want to say, it's actually giving some thought and consideration about the people on the receiving end. It's a skill. Let's look at some of the behavior characteristics of assertive communicators. They believe in achieving goals without hurting anyone else. They are protective of your own rights, and they're also respectful of others. They are socially and emotionally expressive, both of them. They ask directly for their needs to be met, while accepting the possibility of even being rejected. And they know how to accept compliments as well. How about the language that they use? These are very interesting examples. Please, would you turn the volume down? I'm really struggling to concentrate on my studies. So that's a very basic example, but it's telling you that, you know what, first of all, they're saying the word please. Would you turn down the volume? Because again, they're trying to work on their studies. They're explaining to you, they're being apologetic in advance. They're asking for their needs to be met, knowing that they could easily be pushed down or rejected. But they're sharing with you. Now, an aggressive person might say, will you turn that down? A passive aggressive person might say, oh my gosh, I can't hear. Hello? Make sense? So the assertive person, they're addressing it. Another example, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to help you with your project this afternoon because I have a dentist appointment. So they're being transparent. They're letting you know, they apologize in advance. They can't help you. They explain why, because they have something else to do. Right? They're not hiding. I just have something important to do. They're talking about it. Their nonverbal is a medium pitch. Their balance is relaxed, non-fidgety. Their facial expression is really good eye contact. Okay? Their spatial position, they're controlled, they respect each other. And the people in the receiving end, how about this one? They feel they can take their person at their word. They know where they stand with this person. The person can cope with even justified criticism, which means that as an assertive communicator, I can talk about your areas of opportunity. I can provide you some constructive criticism and you receive it well. You're not offended. I'm not saying like, oh man, she's just too sensitive. He's just too sensitive. Maybe it's not them being too sensitive. Maybe it's our delivery on how we deliver it. It's a skill. And they respect of a person. Okay? Let me go to the chat. I think there's something in here, I think. Importance with proper delivery. Thank you, Jamie. Next volunteer. Let's see here. Crystal, since you're giving me eye contact, do you mind reading the passive aggressive style, please? Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. So one of the things I want you folks to do is learn from my mistakes. So my wife and I were engaged in a conversation about a couple years ago, and I call myself pretty fluid and pretty I'm very savvy in terms of these topics. And so my wife was talking to me. She said something. I said, Elisa, that's her name. I'm like, Elisa, you're demonstrating passive aggressive behavior. Well, needless to say, that didn't turn out well for me. So be careful using this in real life situations, okay? Okay, so let's talk about the behavior characteristics of passive aggressive people. They are indirectly aggressive, they're sarcastic, devious, unreliable, they can be complaining, patronizing, they also known to gossip. They can also be labeled as sort of two-faced, smiling in your face, but sort of stabbing you behind your back. The language that passive aggressive people use are something like this. Why don't you go ahead and do it? My ideas aren't very good anyway, right? Or, oh, don't worry about me. I can sort it out myself like I usually have to. That's passive aggressive behavior. Nonverbal characteristics, they're often speaks with sugary voice. Right? They sound nice and sweet and innocent. Their posture is also invasive like the aggressive person. Their facial expression, again, looks sweet